For an average video game enthusiast, the concept of yearly franchises usually comes with a degree of skepticism. Game development has only become more and more resource-intensive as the years have passed, which means that any IP maintaining a rigorous release schedule would have to make some concessions to keep up this pace. Speaking for myself here, there's only ever been one series of games where its abundance of releases still made way for compelling experiences every time, and that series was Yakuza. Its history of asset reuse is pretty well established, and usually used as a positive when looking at how future games of the series would build off what came before. As of late, however, the budgetary constraints of the latest releases have become increasingly apparent, leading to concern among fans regarding the contents and polish of future RGG releases. So today, we'll try to do some troubleshooting. Let's try to determine what led to the budget changes and look for ways to solve this conundrum. Now, as was stated before, asset reuse and working on a limited budget is technically a common occurrence for the series, but between 2023 and 2026, the ratio of budget releases compared to larger-scale projects has significantly shifted in the former's favor. For newcomers to the series, budget releases in Yakuza commonly take form of either Kiwami games, i.e. remakes of past entries, or Gaiden games, i.e. shorter-scale side stories. So with that in mind, what does the recent release schedule look like? Well, counting the as-of-yet unreleased combo of Kiwami 3 and Mina Gaiden, the latest 6 releases of the series include 5 budget releases and but a single non-budget release, that being Infinite Wealth. In the past, by comparison, any time we'd see a budget release or two, such entries would be bookended by more substantial projects, which would commonly address design flaws exhibited in between. Hence why the more recent release schedule stands out to many longtime fans. Mind you, we're just talking about the brand new releases here, as RGG in the meantime also worked on a Switch port of Yakuza Kiwami, Switch 2 ports of Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2, alongside new ports of this trilogy for modern systems like the PS5, though the full nature of these ports is still shrouded in mystery. So clearly, they've been keeping busy. But even with the rise in employee numbers over the past few years, which prevented them from releasing critical failures, something behind the scenes seems to have led to a shift in development priorities. This is where we delve into theory territory, as I believe that the main reason for the abundance of budget releases can be attributed to two things, those being the series' 20th anniversary and RGG taking on major non-Yakuza projects to create. For a while now, they've been working on a brand new Virtua Fighter game, and more importantly for this channel, and this particular subject of discussion, the original IP, Stranger Than Heaven, which has been in the works going as far back as late 2021. Now, since the studio commonly works on just one major project at a time, with a handful of smaller scale projects to release in the meantime, we could suspect that once Infinite Wealth finished development, most of the A-team in the studio shifted to Stranger Than Heaven as the next major release, something that could be backed up by both the credits in one of the reveal trailers and the fact the quote-unquote B-team of the studio has been consistently working on the various budget games that released around Infinite. At present time, Stranger Than Heaven is proving to be the project with the longest development timeline out of any RGG game. But with the 20th anniversary of their flagship franchise being right around the corner, they couldn't exactly overlook this event. Remember how one of their biggest releases, that being Yakuza 0, was itself a major anniversary project that did wonders for the IP, and likely set a precedent for what fans could expect from the team for the next milestone. So in the end, this time round, they tried doing everything at once, leading to a variety of smaller projects in the process. Speaking as an economist by trade, I get this train of thought, as you can never fully prepare for how an experimental project of this magnitude could affect your general productivity. But if you've been attuned to the community's discourse surrounding the newest Yakuza releases, you'll note that the games have been divisive from circle to circle. And the reasons for their division can commonly be attributed to the question of resource allocation, like time, money, manpower, and the like. For example, Ishin Kiwami, was the first time the team shipped a game in Unreal Engine, which came with a lot of growing pains that could have been alleviated had the team had more time to polish their skills in the engine. Similarly, Gaiden was given an unforgivingly short dev cycle by nature of Infinite Wealth's story taking unexpected turns late in its development, and Pirate Yakuza is a project with even more questions to it than the former two, considering the rumored narrative cuts shown in a project leak or last-second gameplay cuts like the second heat bar that was removed after the release of select public demos. This isn't to say that the older games didn't have tumultuous development cycles with their own setbacks, but back then, anytime you could tell the team was saving funds with a budget Yakuza game, it was to ultimately benefit the next non-budget Yakuza release, and the gameplay improvements commonly reflected that. Meanwhile today, not only do we have turn-based games, beat-em-up games, and whatever Stranger Than Heaven will end up being, but these individual groupations have vastly different budgets between one another, making it feel like the team is playing catch-up with itself. It comes off as if the beat-em-up entries of today predominantly serve to ensure extra funds for the major games that have become too big to handle, hence the release of Ishin Kiwami and Gaiden before Infinite Wealth, and presumably Pirate, K3, and Dark Ties before Stranger Than Heaven. Alternatively, maybe RGG really does want to go back to fully financed beat-em-up entries, but they've invested so much into their new IP that they just need to finish it to finally get back on track. What if this was meant to be the 20th anniversary release and they realized they couldn't finish it in time, hence the announcement of K3 and Dark Ties? Mind you, I still actively revisit all of these games and love them dearly, but it's clear that the current release schedule led to a myriad of design casualties, and that the team really should take a breather and think about what to do next, given that their franchise is established enough to sustain itself for pauses longer than a year. Now, going by a brief statement by Yokoyama from a while ago, 2026 will seemingly not feature an RGG Summit, meaning that after Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties finally release, they will likely focus on finishing up their non-Yakuza projects properly and then take some time to regroup. So, as far as behind-the-scenes reasons go, I believe this explains the divisive nature of the recent games in part. But what if another unforeseen setback forces the team to create more budget releases? What can they look out for within current circumstances? Well, one thing to consider would be more deliberate release sequencing, allowing them to build off recent gameplay predecessors directly, rather than interpreting older ones on the clock, or creating brand new assets that will largely be exclusive to a single release. Now, what do I mean by that? Gaiden and Pirate Yakuza were the first instances of a playable Kiryu or Majima since Kiwami 2, a game that released back in 2017 and was conceived in a significantly different version of the Dragon engine than we're dealing with today. The team in charge of the Gaidens was building off systems many of them didn't even work on back then, so having a straight-up upgrade here a la the ones from Yakuza 2, 4, Kiwami, Lost Judgment, or Infinite Wealth would have been a hard call even if the team were given adequate development time. The secondary styles present, on the other hand, while brand new, couldn't really be reused wholesale in future releases because of lore implications, meaning that if the team wants to keep refining and building off what they're currently releasing, they'll need to think a couple of games ahead of time, especially if they know Stranger Than Heaven is still long ways off. In essence, if you're making a Kiryu or Majima game already, try planning for another release around them to mitigate the risks that come from budget restrictions, kind of like what is seemingly being attempted with Kiwami 3. On the other hand, while deliberate asset reuse is a series standard, there are times when trying out something different is still a necessity. And the one thing that stands out in that regard, at least for me, would be the new experience system. While I'm wholly against the implementation of mandatory side content in the critical path, I believe the general concept of the Akame network in Gaiden was a nice touch to help that game stand out. It incentivized exploring the map, rewarded you substantially for doing sub-stories or smaller fetch quests, and the use of money and Akame points to unlock your skills brought back a bit of the decision-making process from Yakuza 0, which I thought was a great fit for Gaiden's post-game in particular. Then we saw a fairly similar system in Pirate Yakuza. And while I found it to be a much weaker fit here, it still worked out in the end by nature of island exploration and treasure hunting, giving you substantial amounts of pirate points. But now, after that, the fact that both Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties seem to be repeating this concept yet again, I think we're pushing it a bit too far. The Akame Network-inspired point system is something that served as a nice change of pace for a bit, but it is not strong enough to be a series mainstay. Mind you, this is all without going into the amount of filler that could be potentially tied to it, as right now we're just talking about a means of having a new Yakuza release feel fresher than whatever it was that you played directly before it. Looking at older releases, the experience system would be retooled fairly frequently. From Yakuza 4 implementing orbs to mitigate streamlined skill acquisition, to Yakuza 5 combining that system with the conventional one from Yakuza 1 through 3, to 0 focusing on money also being your XP, we don't really stick by the same thing for too long in the series. Because of this, I think adding the double points into K3 specifically was a bad call. And given how RGG said they were putting significantly more effort into this remake compared to the previous ones, maybe giving the experience system a new look, even if it were, let's say, a direct callback to the one from OG3, it could have helped this game and whatever follows it have their own place in the franchise's game design progression for all modern players. Lastly, we have the storytelling, the last of the big three complaints stemming from modern RGG releases, all of which I believe to be the result of resource issues in one way or another. The simple solution to this is to think of a clear ending to the narrative from the start of the project and work your way from there, rather than yet again going the classic Yokoyama strategy of working as you go. Given that you are already making a budget release, you clearly have significantly more things working against you than normal, even if you just look at it from the perspective of time investment, so any advantage you can take by thinking ahead should likely be considered. Evidently, these were just 3 minor points that I thought to bring up, and thankfully, at least at this point, we've yet to see a genuinely mediocre new game by the studio. But all of these little concerns could balloon into a project that could divide more than just a small fraction of the community. So if we collectively want to avoid that in the future, and have the series keep improving all around, we'll need to look at these issues in earnest and work through them collectively. But that's just my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what you think about the points raised here and how you would fix any of the potential issues present. Thank you for your time, and I hope whatever comes next manages to unite the community yet again, bringing it back to the way it was 10 years ago with the golden era of the series. So, until next time, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Cheers!